Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pine Hills Palace within the Extreme Studio, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have the young 20-something Professor Pixel with me to discuss the 1974 Dan Curtis production. Yes, a Dan Curtis production of Dracula starring Jack Palance. And of course, I've got from the great Midwest a guy about to get hit severely with a snowstorm. RDV, I'm trying to keep a straight face here, guys, because as we know, going into Halloween season, we've been talking about a lot of different movies and themes. Earlier tonight, we discussed Mission Impossible 11 and 12, Season 1 on Extreme TV, Professor Pixel and I, and their episodes were there. Before that, at 6 o'clock, we briefly went over a movie that was very feminist in nature, a damn good-looking film with some beautiful people in it. Oh, my goodness, called Byzantium. And so, when I have to announce to everybody that we're talking about Jack Palance's Dan Curtis production, I will just simply say this. It's there. It looks great. I love the opening scene. I love Jack Palance chewing on scenery. If you don't watch it anymore in the rest of your life, that's fine. So, the whole non-lesbian vampire, stripper, dancer sort of thing was by far the best thing I watched today, guys. And Pixel, I got to start with you first, even though RDV is technically second in command here because you're such a Dan Curtis fan. Give us your initial take on this.
Splurge, my boy. Splurge.
Spooge. Well.
There is no secret in the world. Dan Curtis has a very specific story that he loves to tell.
And you are
that
right.
is the story.
And this is the big budget version of the low budget version he did.
And then he got a bigger budget to do another 12 episodes. And that's another story. One that we've covered here on the Extreme Movie Show. So go check out the Dark Shadows Revival review. But anyway, he loves vampires. He loves lost loves, reincarnated, and that is here. That's probably the big thing. Like, he loves a beautiful woman. Don't we all? But he loves the idea of that beautiful woman coming back. I think what's truly great about this film, though, is just how it looks. Rob, you're usually the one to jump onto that.
Yes.
He has a very specific style. It comes in clearly here. Great shots. The mood is set. Darkness lurks. And you're right, Jack Palance, he has a presence as Dracula. But I'm going to actually admit it's not the strongest adaptation of Dracula.
Wow, I'm shocked you would say such a thing. So, and again, to remind everybody, being the young 20-something, it's an amazing feat all on its own because in your entire 10 to 14 years old career, you watched every 1,225 episodes of the original Dark Shadows, including doing the revival with me here on Extreme TV. And, RDV, you and I handle a lot of the action stuff, and I know we have our different tastes in whether things work or not. To me, the problem I have with this, and I don't know what you share with it when you give your initial impressions, is the movie just really isn't scary. It's not atmospheric enough. It's just sort of bland, despite Jack Palance's presence and some cool shots. Was this a first watch for you? And if so, what kind of takeaway did you have?
First watch for me, and I know this would be straight up Pixel's his bias is going to show for this movie because it's Dan Curtis.
True.
For me, I don't even like the original the Anne Rice Bram Stoker one they did in the 90s, I think it was.
A lot of people say it's hearsay, but there's also some people like you that have a very strong opinion about it, thinking it's crap.
So going to this, I do love the scenery. There's great scenery stuff there. Clearly, I felt like I was watching Dark Shadows.
Yep.
And for me, that's a problem because I just can't stand Dark Shadows. But so I gotta say this: it was interesting to see the difference in this take on Dracula versus the Christopher Lee version we've always come to love.
Right.
And I can't help it. Like, there's this servant, which I think is the guy that Pixel's using for his photo right now. He goes to Dracula's house, and then he realizes, where he is. He can't leave. He gets his head knocked out in the bastion, and I'm like right there with them. I'm like, let's end it right now. Jack Palance he's better in Hawk the Slayer than he is in this.
Wow. Throwing fisticuffs early, coming out with haymakers in the first round. You're going for the knockout, sir. You want to win by points?
like I said, it just going all the way through this. I'm just Jack. I just can't see Jack Palance as Dracula. I see him as either from City Slickers, or I see him with the Chuck. Was it Chuck Norris? It was the Steven Seagal movie. He's a bad guy, and just see him as Dracula, it just doesn't fit because Dracula is Christopher Lee.
It's an interesting point that you raise with that.
Yeah, he's Jack Palance is too American. And maybe that's because I'm used to British horror,
right?
But like even the end, I guess this is what surprised me the most. At the end, I felt like this is the inspiration for Paul Rubin's character in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Jack Palance just won't freaking die. It's just the sunlight. I'm like, instead of instantly on fire, he's just and then finally the spear, and then the blood coming out. It's like, how much did they pay him to do that? That's what I'm wondering. How much did the budget go to Jack Palance?
So I'm going to say this with a little bit of a semi-serious tone to it, because I'm not really embellishing or joking about it. As a kid, seeing a lot of older films, two people terrified me. One was Jack Palance, because he had that kind of, I'm batshit kind of crazy, and I'm talking really low, and it was very frightening. And he kind of kept that shtick up, but he kind of turned into a camp version of himself when he had a renaissance a little bit there in the 80s. Mm-hmm. The other person is somebody that you and I, RDV, covered when we did the original TV show movie of Salem's Lot. And that, of course, would be James Mason, who to this day still terrifies the fuck out of me and scares me.
James Mason as Dracula would have been a better fit.
The thing here is Jack Palance does such a great job, I think, of, first of all, he's tall. He's like Christopher Lee. He fits the role. He's not playing a physical guy beating the shit out of you. But just the angst on his face and the way his lips were trembling, I thought if they just kept it on his face, it was tremendous. But everybody else in this movie is forgettable. And honestly, the opening shot, I was starting to watch it earlier today. I was like, fuck yeah, this is pretty good. We got the fog machines. We got about 150 German shepherds just running around batshit crazy, all coming up into his castle at one time. I'm like, holy hell, what an incredible shot that is. I'm like, yeah. Then he comes storming out of the room, and you're like, fuck yeah. And then you have some wuss ass guy that plays in just about every other friggin' role, and you're like, this guy's a wimp. I don't care about him. Kill him.
Yeah, you had Arthur and his girlfriend who gets seduced by Dracula. Obviously, you hit through hypnosis because Jack Palance is not as charming as Christopher Lee is. He is more I'm going to beat the shit out of you if you don't do this. So him being Dracula is kind of an interesting take. I'm not sure what there was the inspiration to cast him in this role. It was such a weird role for him. But the guy plays Arthur in here too. Talking about bad haircuts.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're totally right, and that didn't help at all. And I know a lot of that was the style.
He looked like from the Starburst commercial. He's the little the blueberry guy, the kid that likes blueberries and all that stuff. The little sire, the 15th century haircut, little curls at the end. It looks really out of place. But oh my gosh, dude, I kept going through this movie. I kept wondering if they would have cast Oliver Reed in this as the guy who's going around helping Arthur kill the vampires.
The problem with that would be, wow, I think that's a wonderful idea. This is a movie that, because of how strong Jack Palance can be, the other people don't live up to it. And some people are so good, you have to have good people around them. But then you have some people, like you and I have talked about in action movies, that are glue guys that are there to elevate other people. Now, Pixel, you and I talked about how when we did the return of Twin Peaks season 3 from, I think, 2017, you and I totally disagreed on the way they told all those episodes, because I said I liked the fact they did not immediately go to Twin Peaks. They told everything around there and it would end up there, and you thought about it the opposite. Here with Dan Curtis, being the Dan Curtis aficionado that you are, what were your expectations coming into this movie, and were they met?
I'm not gonna lie, there was a video that I watched a few years ago about Dracula adaptations and what stands up to the original. And I already knew that Dan Curtis had taken the Dan Curtis path of lost love for Dracula, and that was fine. So I knew that coming in.
I agree with you on that. I do like that, the lost love. I love that lore of Dracula.
Yeah,
his, like we saw in Dracula Untold, his wife, and at the end of the movie, It's another girl who looks exactly like his wife. Of course, the guy's gonna be obsessed about that. You know.
See, here's where I disagree, because my boy Barnabas Collins has that story down pat. But anyway, I know he has an affliction.
The Johnny
for it,
Depp one?
so-
Huh.
No, stop it. We don't even acknowledge that here. Come on, man.
How
That should have been a Dan Curtis production.
he he died before the movie released, and that was probably a mercy.
That's probably why it was better.
So the thing about this, I don't think I could agree with your take about. I like Christopher Lee as Dracula. Don't get me wrong. Even though we saw the last performance of him as Dracula in Dracula and Son,
Fake fan.
Bela Lugosi, he does a great job. What's the other Bram Stoker's Dracula? The one that's more notable.
This kid.
We're not talking Leslie Nielsen. No, we're talking one from the early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Oh,
I believe there are.
It's Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
See, what's funny is actually after this movie, Jack Palance was asked to reprise the role of Dracula many times, but every time he declined. But
Thank you.
that's.
Is it really Jack Palance's fault, or is it the movie? Because I tell you, this is going to sound. I'm going to throw this out there. I'm just going to throw this out there. Maybe you take it, maybe you don't. Let's see what happens. But there's a scene where he wakes up the next day and Dracula's gone. He's been in prison there, and in the books as a kid, I remember him always trying to like climb outside his room and climb down. That's when he meets the three sisters or whatever you want to call them. And in here we see some great camera work of him looking out. There's the pond, and he's trying to escape. And he ends up in the other room with the coffins and stuff. And a part of me goes, the way this movie's going, I almost wish it was a fucking silent movie, because the people talking was just like blah blah blah. There's no juice. There's no excitement. They were just in their Britishy way saying stuff, and it sounds good, but there's no life behind it.
But that brings me to my next point: the music production behind this is Roger. Oh man, I can't remember his last name, but
Corman?
The same man who did the music for Dark Shadows. And if you've watched Dark Shadows, you know that music is iconic, and you can feel those notes in here in their own new way, and it's brilliant. Oh my gosh, my ears were like exploding because it just felt so good. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
RDV. No, it's okay.
You need tissue?
Got excited.
No, RDV, you and I have talked about this before with martial arts films, where we talk about having a character that we get to first, and then we get the big kick-ass at the end. Where here, with Jack Palance, I mean, were you rooting for anybody? I mean, did you wish this moved faster? Usually you call bullshit on stuff that's not exciting enough.
For me,
I might go the other way, but I mean, how did you feel about all that?
This movie was slow-paced.
Yeah,
now
absolutely.
that would work with maybe some other movies, but for this, no. We reviewed was it Wolfen? Wolfen had some of a slow pace, but it also sped up in certain parts. This just kind of felt like it was just a melodramatic, kind of slow pace. You knew what was going to happen. You knew Dracula was going to bite it at the end. No pun intended. But I don't know. I said the music was great, but I just kept thinking of the movie as like, man, no wonder people don't like Dracula anymore. And he's cast as a woman, because Dracula was a misogynist. He had 3 brides. He's like, I want another one.
Yeah.
It was. But on a serious note, though, Jack Palance, I said, is such a weird fit to put into this, and that's kind of what threw me off through the movie. I didn't care for any of the side characters. I was like, oh, when the woman's coming to to Arthur, he's like, let me in. I'm thinking like, oh, you're dead. Stay. The guy comes up with the cross. I'm just be like, be gone, thought.
Well, the thing too is like, you're talking about these side characters, and it's like the 3 of us together in some combination. We've done some Hammer films, right?
Yeah.
And I go, First of all, he comes out and he's rocking a great ascot. You know, we had that one of our Mission Impossible episodes from season 1 with Lloyd Bridges wearing one. So I'm marking out on how great the set pieces look. And one thing Dan Curtis does do is he'll show food on a table and lots of little figurines and accents in the background, and it's so lush. But here's the thing: when you're talking Hammer horror and you're looking at the women, even if they're just the vampires, let's say, I'm looking at them. I'm going, the more I stare at them, the more beautiful looking they seem to get. And the more I'm interested in it, like if they're going to be a big role, right? And then here, I'm looking at all the women. I'm going, yeah, they're attractive, and I just stopped caring. I don't know if they were just dressed bland on purpose, or there was a lack of sexiness to it. But this felt like a very G-rated version. It was not really terrifying at all. Either be kind of young or
made for
whatever, or
TV
be an
movie.
adult.
This
But
was
still
made for
early
TV.
70s. Still, come on.
It was made for TV.
Yeah. I mean,
But I want to point out though, I did like the opening carriage scene. I always love that in any movie as Dracula or it's werewolf, you know, Wolfman. I love that, you know, the Victorian, you know, everybody's on carriage, horses, nobody's on their cell phone. There's always a dark at night. So I like that. I mean, and I go back to Dracula's Son. I know you guys didn't care for that, but I like the opening scene of that too. And Robbie, you mentioned that as well with the carriage and everything.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
It
so
felt like it was going to be a tense film.
Yeah. Honestly, I said I would have had, instead of Arthur being kind of a wimp, I would have had the problem is where's Van Helsing? That's what I want. I want Abraham Helsing versus Dracula. They did that in the 1990s one with Gary Oldman. But we've been watching all these Dracula movies, the Christopher Lee one. The only one I saw is when they had not Vincent Price, it's the other one. The other actor, Christopher Lee and
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing
is Van Helsing.
Yes.
That's what
he's a badass as Van Helsing.
And yes, and that's what I want. If you're gonna have Dracula, you gotta have Van Helsing. Having Dracula without Van Helsing just really it's like half the story.
They had Van Helsing, not Nigel Davenport played Van Helsing.
It wasn't really Van Helsing though.
Yeah, because here's the thing. There's an exchange where they're talking about, that I thought sums this movie up. You've already seen Jack Palance, right? You know what's going on. So to me, when it becomes spoken word out there, when they're in the studio, you know, drinking scotch, smoking cigars, and they're debating about what kind of friggin' problem they're dealing with, where he's like, you know, I've been around the world and I've seen many things, and even though I'm a man of science, I have to trust my experience. And he's explaining all these reasons to a young, naive person who goes, how dare you? You could even think of such a thing about the supernatural when you're a man of science. It's like, bro, did you see what's been going on? Come on. And it's like, there's just no sense of urgency in them. And that's the whole thing with like Peter Cushing or the Van Helsing role. He's the guy that goes, oh, fuck, you guys don't know what the hell you're in for. This is a shitstorm, and we're screwed. We need to get this.
Yeah.
We need to get the garlic. We need to do this. We need to do that.
Yeah.
You got to follow my directions. Don't break it. I got to go find this other guy and help out. Or I'm going to be right back. Don't fuck it up. You don't get any of that in here.
And that's the thing. It's like, you know, I always like the Curse of Frankenstein, you know, with Peter Cushing and stuff, you know, because there actually was more of an urgency of suspense when he has to try and hide, you know, from people because he's being pursued because of the monster. This was like, it's just Dracula, and he's kind of like, and then he bites this girl. I said, and the Van Helsing was kind of a wimp. Man, it wasn't as bad. Either they go wimpy Van Helsing, or they go over the top Van Helsing with what's his name? Yeah, Hugh Jackman in that movie. I'm like, I think it's way too sci-fi. You know,
that doesn't count. Although I liked it, although it was bad.
But I mean, I want a badass Van Helsing. He's like, I'm gonna go kill the shit out of that vampire. And that's why I always liked the movie Blade, because it took a Van Helsing character and went after Dracula. It was a different thing, kind of story, kind of a different interpretation.
Well, let me mention this because earlier tonight we reviewed a movie called Byzantium, and it's a feminist movie, and I think it's done very well, and it's a beautifully shot film. But one of the comments I made there in RDV, I think in a roundabout way, you might have said this earlier, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, where you said, it's kind of boring, characters kind of flat, and I would agree with you, but you mentioned that about male vampires, and it's true. Most male vampires are only portrayed a certain way, and once you get used to them, you go, well, I just want the guy that's the most coolest, most macho one, and that's going to be Christopher Lee. At least I think that's what we'd be saying. Whereas with these two ladies, they have this intricate story about what's going on. And I know we've done some lesbian vampire films and other types there, and it's not because of the lesbianism and the sex. It's because you can be more nuanced and tell a different kind of story. This movie doesn't really tell a story. It just kind of goes through the motions. And even though there's a cool shot of like the movie we covered a month or two ago, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, it's all about that one part. That is a great way to tell a new way of how to look at Dracula. Here we get a great shot of him standing on the shore with the wind. I'm like, God damn, Chris gets these great shots, but why do I care? And
I would. I mean, if they made a sequel to Demeter, I want it to be where that guy runs into Abraham Van Helsing, and then they form a team. Like I said, I want to have Van Helsing with balls, but also he looks like he's crazy because nobody believes in vampires.
Yeah,
that's what I want. I mean, because I want a guy who's willing to go on the verge, risk his life to save people who don't give a shit about him because they think he's crazy. They think vampires don't exist. What are you talking about? I said, I just want a little more upbeat in the tone. I want a much more believable Dracula. And I hate the fact that they call him Dracula because I love how they, at the end they're like, oh, they called him Dracula. No, it's like his name was Vlad.
Yeah.
And like so that's another thing. They're changing it. Like I like the more glamorous, Dracula.
That's because they're going with the Vlad the Impaler, great
warlord,
great warrior who found a way to live forever.
Yeah. Well, yes, and to me that's more appealing than just some schmuck. He's like, I just live forever.
Let me ask you guys this though too. Okay, like. Here in the Xtreme Studios, not gonna lie, I got my cigar case over here on the wall with my books, and I've got my other stuff in here. I've been debating strongly about this because every time I see this with a real serious character like Dracula, I pop really big, and I think it's kind of a cool thing. But you guys may have seen this in a lot of other films, but particularly these vampire ones, I know it's there. There's always that giant portrait of them like as a badass in like their prime in armor or killing somebody, and there's always some chick in it too that's like his lost love. It looks beautiful, and I thought, I gotta give Dracula props. He knows what's important in this studio to have a picture of it.
No, I need
and the
more
love of his life.
I need more wenches in the painting at the bottom at my feet.
It was a pretty cool painting, though.
It was. I'm like, I'd like to see myself in a suit of armor like that.
Well, that's what I think of when I watch Ghostbusters. That Vince.
Exactly, right. The picture in there.
The second movie. Yeah, he's like, I love that. Like that was a badass. Like the guys, they beheaded him, and they stabbed him. They burned him with a stick, and they beheaded him, and he swear he could come back alive. It's like, like they said in this, like they said at the very end, they like explain who Dracula is. Like, why wasn't it at the beginning? Set up the guy. He's a badass. Just they said at the end, oh, we should let you know in case you fell asleep by now. Here. This is who Dracula is. He was a warlord, that was unkillable. They called him Dracula because he was and their interpretation is Dracula means devil. It's like, I would have loved that in the beginning, if you're going to tell people who Dracula is. It's the first time watch for people who don't even know Dracula is, this would not be as appealing. They'd probably never go back and watch another Dracula movie.
Well, and that's why, we chose to kind of cover some different films, not necessarily vampire movies, although we certainly have done a lot of them, but just as far as the different tones of them and what they are. And there's a couple of the films out there that we may or may not get to reviewing that, we've covered what we'll probably get to next year or the year after that. And it's true. And I think we're all agreeing on the same thing here is that it looks great. It's fine. There's no big deal to it. It's not going to scare you. It's not going to be away. It's kind of boring. It's kind of plain Jane. It does hit all the notes. If you needed a very... It's like white rice. It has no flavor. What makes it, useful is that's a vessel for, taking on other flavors and stuff. This movie doesn't have it. It needs other things with it. But if you don't know anything about Dracula, and frankly, who reads anymore, you could do worse by watching Dracula than watching this too. But a lot of people are taken by whatever movies they see first. And if you've seen the Christopher Lee ones, I agree with you, RDV. Watching this, and you're like, it's a bit of a drop off.
I watch these other shows at vampires, and there's always someone that says, I revoke your invitation, and the vampire either dies or he gets thrown out the window.
It's just weak sauce.
I love that.
That's lame.
I know.
Giant spear is a cool way to die. I'm sorry.
I'm saying if you have to be invited as a vampire into a building, they should be able to revoke invitation. That means you're gone to get out of there. You know,
No.
They've never really explained it that way or holy or consecrated ground and the rules for it. So one of the problems is here is that you're kind of expected to know the story already, and this movie does not do a good job of explaining to you those rules of that particular universe. I mentioned this before with our 6 o'clock review of Byzantium, where she kind of where the guy looks at her and says, "Hey, do I have to invite you?" And she's like, "Yeah," and she comes in. But that's kind of not necessarily exactly, I think, how it was in the original Bram Stoker's Dracula. And of course, the reason why we did the Karnstein trilogy, Pixel, was not just because, lesbian vampires, but that's one of the earlier, before Dracula, source material of what vampires are supposed to be. This kind of idea of it. And it's just... It just sounds silly because, see, here's the thing with Dan Curse, and I think what I'm trying to say is I'm disappointed by this because it looks great, and while if something's not that great written-wise, if it looks good or is acted well or there's something cool about it, it can elevate it. It doesn't work here because it's like, Mr. Curtis, bro, you got Jack Palance, you got all these zeros in there, you can juice this up, but you got to add something else to this because it's not working. You're just checking all the dots, hitting all the basic notes. I get it. Maybe it's just it's a simple cash movie for you. I get it, but come on, bro. You're fucking Dan Curtis. Hit a goddamn home run. You're going to TV after that shit show of Dark Shadows. Let's be honest, Pixel. That's what it was. And that's why he went super crazy into Supernatural. It was just to draw eyeballs and stay in. It was absolutely not for continuity or long-term storytelling. And now you're getting all this money to do this made-for-TV movie. And you just kind of make something that just gets by. I feel cheated, Pixel.
Yeah. Watch, for those who watch 30 Days a Night.
I feel like you're purposely trying to make me angry, but that's okay.
I feel cheated.
I mean, Dark Shadows is not a shit show. I mean, it's a soap opera. So if all soap operas are in that vein for you, okay. But it's a supernatural soap opera. It was one of the most revolutionary ones of its time. But deep breath. So after that, he went on. He made movies based off of Dark Shadows, and then he made. Actually, this wasn't his first time with Jack Palance, because there's a movie before this called The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which stars Jack Palance in the lead role. It's a Dan Curtis production, and then they did it again with Dracula. So, but I agree that this is a disappointing adaptation in many ways, but it has good qualities to it. I think Jack Palance does a brilliant job in performing. I think it's shot well. The music is great.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, you're right. A lot of the side characters are kind of weak, but I feel like there are moments like at the end, giant spear, you're staring at him.
That was kind of cool, but still.
That is cool. But I mean, I'm not saying this is the best one. I haven't seen all of them, but I'm not saying this is the best one. But I'm not saying I just don't think it was horrible.
Spear out of nowhere. Spear KO. All right. I'm going to put you on the spot here, RDV. I want you to go with your gut because that's usually right. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Dan Curtis Dracula or the original 1985 Fright Night?
Fright Night, always.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you.
And I kept thinking, like I said, like Fright Night was another spin on the actual Dracula stuff. Yeah. Even though it wasn't really Dracula, it was more of vampires. But you brought in a character who's supposed to be like Vincent Price, Mm-hmm. And he's a great and this kid who's obsessed with vampires, just like we saw it in Salem's Lot. The kid is obsessed with the monsters, ends up having to basically take on creatures of the night. And I say I love that movie and the reboot. It's rare when you find a movie and you find its reboot and they're equally just as entertaining.
Reboot's not bad.
No,
we've covered that. Colin Farrell. We've covered that.
Colin Farrell is Jerry's freaking frightening, man. If Colin Farrell ever played another guy who's just going around just stalking women, like a serial killer, like Ted Bundy, I'd watch it because he is that captivating.
I would too.
Yeah. But I want to say, I was going back before Pixel just railroaded over me. I was talking about 30 Days a Night was another movie that took vampires and took away the Dracula and just did a different new take on it. town that's in up in Alaska where it's 30 days of night where they don't have no sun. Vampires come in, they're gonna live there, and this guy has to defend the town and come up with new ways. I honestly love when people can do that because I love Dracula, but I feel that there's way too many Dracula movies. It gets to the point where it gets stale. Everybody copies each other.
Yep.
You can change the actor, you can put new music on it if you want to, but the story remains the same. And it just gets okay. I know what's going to happen. Dracula does this. This movie at the end was surprising because I thought, vampires, fire. Oh God, he's just going to burn us through the flames. I just instead he's just like, oh my gosh, I've never seen the light before. I've been up all night. Oh crap, I can't see. And I just kept thinking it's like Paul Rubens. Like I'm counting the minutes. I'm like, is he gonna die?
And the problem too is these damn British. While it's cool with their accents and the way they could talk and all that, they're just so goddamn civil. So like when he gets there and he's talking to him about Carfax Abbey and they're being polite and all this stuff, and the guy's trying to eat, and then he's like, and the way Jack Palance talks always creeps me out too because he has that whispering kind of delivery where he's like, going to read these letters and tell them that you're going to. And he sounded like he's holding back an orgasm, like he's ashamed, right? He's like, you're going to write these letters and say that you're going to be here for a month. And the guy's like, why? And then he locks them in. I want to see one time the dude that always goes there and gets locked up be like, hey, fuck you, I'm getting out of here right now, you motherfucker. You know what I'm saying?
David Carradine is Van Helsing versus Jack Palance. They bring up Once Bitten in the chat.
I really don't want to reference Once Bitten. Oh
yes,
my God.
I will bring up another movie that I find even more entertaining than that, and that is My Best Friend's a Vampire.
Which one?
My Best Friend's a Vampire. Where the kid, it's the same premise, where the kid, gets seduced by this new woman who moves into town, and then she, turns him in slowly into the vampire, and he's being hunted by what's a Roddy McDowell look like, or was it Donald Sutherland? I can't remember what it was, but it was entertaining. But aside from that, though, the future's so bright I gotta wear shades. That's pretty much the songs we've been playing at the end of this movie with Jack Palance. It literally I almost spit my drink out. I thought it was Mel Brooks at the end because the way his death scene lasted forever. Literally, I'm just waiting for like a light. Oh God, it was just weird because I don't think I've seen another vampire movie where the sunlight doesn't just start melting them or burning it on fire.
Right.
I felt like the sunlight just made him weak, and that was about it.
I think that's how it was in the book, actually.
And what's the other thing with vampires and water? They can't be
cross running water.
But what about water that's just water thrown at them? Does that have any effect at all?
Only if it's holy water.
Okay, yeah, because we saw that
in one of the Christopher Lee ones. He's standing at the edge of a castle, and I think he's trying to get in the castle because the sun's getting ready to come up, and they're shooting at him, and they're like, "Well, you can't shoot him." He's like, "I'm not shooting him. I'm shooting the ice."
Well, remember, he saw that blood rain when she went in the water. Like it made her weak, just being in the water. That's all. I was confused. It's like people do. Yeah. I love when people do different takes on the vampire stuff, but like I said, this movie. Unfortunately, was not that great. I give it a 4 out of 10.
It's average to me. It's not. It's got great production values. Yeah. It's not worth watching again if you watch it once you've seen it enough.
Pixel, if you want to just go under your own name from now on, just stop using the channel to demote my pronunciation. You are a bigot. It's because I cannot pronounce things like you can. Like if you're bullying me.
But anyway. No, I actually can't because Geeky Papa shows when it comes up. But
final thoughts, Pixel?
My final thoughts are: I think that it's worth seeing. If you are a fan of Dracula, I think there will be something in this for you, and maybe this will give you a taste of what Dan Curtis is capable of. Maybe you will too join me on this epic journey of 1,225 episodes, nearly twice of Dark Shadows. A Dan Curtis production.
We'll only get there once we complete season 1 of TJ Hooker.
Yeah, that was Bitten. Asking you what we were saying. Sorry.
Now, RDV, anything you need to plug for tonight going into next week?
What we're going to be doing is some readings again tonight. If you haven't checked out the Geeky Puppet Show, Pixel and I are over there. And we do readings on Fridays and Sundays over there. 2 readings on Fridays and Sundays starting at 7:15 p.m. Central. They're usually running to about 9:30 Central, I think, sometimes. I don't know. But anyway, check those out. We really ham it up. If you like our comedy here, or kind of, we do that over there too with a bunch of people. But we also on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I at 8 p.m. Central. I'm by myself, or usually with Zach, and we just talk about the new comic books that are coming out, and then plus we show up on Thursdays, the books, the little mini reviews, but just another thing to hang out with. But I will say this: if you haven't subscribed to the Xtreme Movie Show, but you watch our stuff, don't be a creeper. At least subscribe. Then you can lurk away. But but I mean, it's like if you think our channel sucks, wait till you see our more reviews of Dracula. It's always going to be a good time. A bite in the neck, you should say, or pain in the neck. Anyway, Bitten is 2008 Jason Mewes movie. I watched it on TV. Girl's hot in that too. Jason Mewes actually is actually a good actor when he's not playing Jay from Silent Bob. But other than that, look for some more stuff on Tuesday. Rob and I are gonna do something to be announced, and then I believe next weekend is it next Sunday, or is it next Sunday is the 29th. It will be our not this Tuesday, but the Tuesday from next week. It's going to be Halloween, and which I believe, Rob, are you going to be around Halloween?
I may be doing something offline and posting, so I'll take any final suggestions. I do know that I was planning on reviewing The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Dario Argento's first directorial debut. That was our backup for tonight. I want to get that out there because I thought that was a pretty damn good film. Different type of film too, so kind of comparing it to some of the other ones that are out there. There's a couple little minor things like that if I'm not here, I'll be posting that till we get back on our regular schedule. It's just because it's Halloween.
Oh, damn. I was excited for that one too.
Well, we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
So that's right, guys. Click like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below what you thought was right. Do you think this is a good movie, or do you think that I agree with me, or you're with Rob and you're just like, it was a movie?
Yeah. That's why we do this. We're unscripted, and we like to just compare it to other stuff and see what we like and don't like about it. And it's pretty raw. Yeah. So that's how we differentiate ourselves there.
Thank you for showing up, Ed. Thank you, Verity, for showing up too as well. Geeky Puppet Show. We'll see you in a few minutes. And anybody else who's watching tonight, we love you guys. And if you guys have any suggestions for any vampire movies, or actually good werewolf movies that we haven't covered on the channel, let us know. Those are always fun.
Yeah, I echo those comments as well. So good night, everybody. Stay safe as always. Thanks for watching, listening, and remember, this is the Xtreme Movie Show. Stay extreme. Pixel, take us out.
Bram Stoker's Dracula is a Dan Curtis production.
I do not say blah, blah, blah.
Good night now.